It's time for Chicagoland Golf with the editor and publisher of Chicagoland Golf magazine, Phil Kosin. The show where for the next 2 hours, you'll get the latest info from the PGA Tour, local tournaments, and tips for your golf game. And now, your host, Phil Kosin.
And thank you, boys. That is the August 16th polka. I don't know where we found that one, but that's the name of that one, the August 16th polka. Wow. Geez, Dave White, where did this month go?
Where'd the whole summer go? Forget that. Just about the month. Days are getting shorter. It's still not completely light yet. Down here as I'm looking across the lake in the downtown Score Studios.
You mean down the alley toward the lake?
Yeah, down the alley towards the lake, over the buildings, and through the woods.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Well, that's kind of what it is, but it's better than the old studio on Belmont. Remember that?
Down the alley past the dumpster.
Yeah. At least in those...
Beyond the homeless people, all that stuff.
Yeah, at least in those days, though, the parking was free.
The parking was free, and so was the unofficial valet people that took care of your cars if you weren't careful.
Yeah, I like the interior of that studio. It really made me feel like I was at a big-time major market radio station. It had, about a 1/4 inch of nicotine and tar stuck to the walls. Not a healthy environment. Actually, we were really crowded in there.
Yeah, it was basically a bomb shelter.
And then we went down to the NBC Tower, where the Score is still located on the 6th floor. And, it was like a real radio station. You could look through the glass and see the engineer, and there was another studio on the other side of you. You could see the update person, and it was pretty cool. It was set up for the old WMAQ. All right, what's going on in golf today? Wow, what a PGA Championship. I don't know, Dave, did you get to watch any of that?
No, I didn't. I had a family function I had to attend, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
It was, it's typical when professional golfers like those who were at that event complain about the golf course setup. I personally chose, before the event, a few days before the event, and based on his performance at the British Open, I chose Ian Poulter. He of the outlandish costumes, etc., etc., etc. Well, him not do too hot. And I think the reason for that was, coming out of his practice rounds, he was doing a pretty good job of complaining about the golf course conditions and how tough Oakland Hills had been set up. And I think it's very possible, and I really do believe in this, I think he talked himself out of the whole thing. I used to love to go play in tournaments, and, it would be drizzling. And, of course, you'd start anyway because the course was soaking up the water, and it was playable. And I'd listen to other guys in the field complain about having to go out and play in the rain and try to keep their gloves and hands dry and their club grips dry and taking towels with them and wearing a rain suit and juggling all that stuff and still trying to concentrate. And I personally was thrilled to hear those guys complain because they had just taken themselves out of the running. They had just talked themselves out of it. They were creating excuses for themselves before they even stepped to the first tee. And I think that's what Ian Poulter did. However, if you look online where I documented this, I also said that I wasn't sure that 3 weeks later, Padraig Harrington would be up to the task to win another major. Because it does take a lot out of you. You got to admit that. I mean, it's a tremendous mental, not so much physical, but a tremendous mental event, trying to keep your concentration for 4 days. And, we all know that 3 weeks ago his wrist was so bad the day before the British Open that he couldn't even make more than 3 swings on Wednesday during a very short one-hole practice round. Of course, nobody figured him to win, and that's what he did. And as an aside, I would sure like to find out. And I'm not saying I think that Harrington used any illegal drugs or anything like that, so let's not even think that way. But I played college football. I played other sports. I had injuries. And to have a wrist that is so bad that you can't even play a practice round or hit balls with it, and then go out and play 72 holes on a very tough golf course where you're hitting shots out of the hay, which takes a lot out of your wrists, a lot of wrist injuries. A couple people dropped out because of that. Makes me wonder what kind of treatment he got in that 24-hour period between him quitting the practice round and going to the tee the next day. And Harrington did say that the only reason he did go out there Thursday and not withdraw was because he wanted to at least try to defend his title. He didn't want to go, withdraw as the defending champ, and he wins the damn thing. So I really didn't have him figured 3 weeks later to be able to do this. And if it seemed like the PGA came early this year, if that's what your perception was, then you're right, because they have moved it up the last couple years to accommodate the FedEx Cup. Whatever happened to that? I wrote on my blog a piece about, the PGA Tour is in trouble. We all know that. You got good old Tiger Woods on the shelf. Tiger came out on his blog this week at www.tigerwoods.com, and in his little newsletter said that he's not even planning to take a swing with a golf club until after the first of the year. So I would look for him maybe to be back sometime late March, just in time to maybe get in one tune-up round for the Masters. Then again, Tiger, he may just show up at Augusta not having played in, 10 months? But anyway, Tiger wasn't there, and it was a very good show. They got rain, as you all know, that they washed out. They had postponed Saturday's round. We didn't get to see the leaders, or actually the last 3 groups go off. And the rain softened up the golf course. I heard a lot of players say, thank goodness it rescued us from this terrible setup. In fact, I think it was Steve Elkington, quoted by Bob Verdi, and I'll try to find the quote. He talked about what Reese Jones did to the golf course. Well, the things that were causing players problems at Oakland Hills had nothing to do with Reese Jones. Yes, they tightened up the fairways. For the Ryder Cup a couple years ago, I think they were about 32 yards wide. But as a defense from these new drivers, 4 years later, and the bomb and gouge people, that means bomb it off the tee, get as close as you can to the green and take out a wedge and gouge it up there onto the green. They wanted a little more defense for the golf course, so they narrowed the fairways to 25 to 28 yards. Nobody told you had to hit driver on all those holes. That's your decision as a player. And if you start spraying it all over the place, well, that's your problem as a player. Reese Jones, though, the big problems were the rough, the contours of the greens, the firmness and speed of the greens, and the rough around the green complexes, which made it tough to chip it out and stop the ball near the hole if you miss it on the short side. You get that in most majors, especially the U.S. Open. That was the hallmark for many years. Well, Reese Jones didn't have anything to do with how long they cut the rough. And those greens, they're what they call push-up greens. They're dirt-based. Most golf courses we play today, most modern courses, are sand-based greens. That means if you do a cross-section going down about 2 feet, you've got about maybe a foot of sand And then underneath that, you have different sizes of gravel, pea gravel going on up. There's also drain pipes in there, and in some of the new greens, they have a system called sub-air where they can either blow cool air into the greens to keep the grass cool during the really hot days of summer so it doesn't burn up. They can also reverse the process and suck water out of the greens to dry them out after a big rainstorm if they're having a tournament. They have them like that at Augusta, and they're putting them in like that at Cog Hill. However, the greens at Oakland Hills, which were built way back when by Donald Ross, those weren't touched in 1951 by Reese Jones' father, Robert Trent Jones Sr., and they weren't touched in this last restoration work by Reese Jones. Those are the original Donald Ross green surfaces. They're push-up greens. They're dirt-based, and they don't drain as well as sand-based greens. You know, the water on a green will filter down through the sand and and drain out quickly through the drain pipes that they put under there. These don't have any drain pipes. They have to run off naturally, and that's one of the reasons why the greens have such steep contours. They were made to be drained. You look at any golf course here in the Chicago area that has push-up greens, dirt-based greens, and you'll see an area where the greens are designed for the water to run off after a heavy rainfall. So anyway, the point being, Reese Jones was not responsible for what that golf course looked like last week. He put in some bunkering, moved the bunkers to where modern-day drivers, since 1951, the changes, can reach the bunkers off the tees. But the greens were all Donald Ross's work. And Reese Jones didn't decide on how much rough there should be. So, stop blaming Reese. But, of course, the players, they've got to find somebody to blame. Isn't that I think that's one of the prerequisites for being a PGA Tour player, is being able to delegate blame. Either your equipment company, someone clicked the camera in the shutter, clicked the camera shutter in the gallery. My caddy gave me the wrong yardage. You know, it's the old. If you ever listen to these guys, they're hysterical in the press room. It's like this. Well, on the first hole, I made birdie. On the second hole, we made bogey. You know, Patrick Harrington, you know, that golf course, okay, so it got some rain Saturday night. It softened up the greens. I think we got a pretty good show on Sunday, and I think you'd have to agree with that, even without Tiger. Having him and Sergio and Ben Curtis coming down the stretch was pretty captivating as far as I was concerned, and it certainly had a better, different tone than we saw the first 2 days when everybody was playing careful out there and complaining. So Mother Nature stepped in, superseded the setup by the PGA of America and Kerry Hay, and watered the greens, softened them up. Like I said, push-up greens, they don't drain that quickly, so you saw shots sticking. They were hitting them and sticking them on Sunday, and that's probably what made it a little more exciting. They could go at the flags. So turned out well. Good for Patrick Harrington. And what are we going to do at this show today? Well, we're going to talk to Jack Barry. Who better than a guy that has covered events in the Detroit area and Oakland Hills since 1961. And Jack knows that golf course, the ins and outs, so we'll check with Jack and get his opinions and chat a little bit about what happened at the PGA on the weekend. And then after 7 o'clock, we're going to have Mr. Reese Jones join us. And I want to talk to him about how he perceived his changes at Oakland Hills at the request of the membership, how those things held up during the tournament, if there's anything he would do different, and then we'll also get you caught up with Reese on the restoration work at Cog Hill. So it looks like a really good show today. So we'll take the first break, and we'll come back with Jack Barry. I'm Phil Kosin. This is the Chicagoland Golf Show. You're listening to CBS Radio in Chicago, 670 The Score. .619 in Chicago if you've got a tee time this morning, and wow, looks like we're going to have great weather in the Chicago area if you're heading out to play golf. It's about time. And we better get in as many rounds as we can because the days are starting to get shorter. Oh, my, did he say that? Yes, he did. I mean, what are they? Meteorological fall starts, what, September 1st? It's only, what, about 2 weeks away? Egads. Anyway, welcome into the Chicagoland Golf Show. I'm Phil Kosin. If you're a geek, then you'll be watching or at least following the U.S. Amateur this upcoming week. It starts Monday at Pinehurst. What a terrible place to go to play golf. Pinehurst. Ugh, egads. What a factory. Yeah, sure. Pinehurst is a place where if you die and you got to pick what your heaven was like, and of course you wanted to take your golf clubs with you, it would look just like Pinehurst. And on the phone with us is a guy who has been to Pinehurst many times, our writer our columnist who was the host media guy for the PGA Championship last week up at Oakland Hills, which is right near his home. Jack Barry. Good morning, Jack. How are you?
Well, Phil, hold on one second. Jack dropped off. I'm going to get him back for us, okay?
All right. That's okay. What else is happening? If you go to our blog at ChicagolandGolf.com, I don't know what's going on with the LPGA Tour. This woman, Carolyn Bivens, who is the new commissioner the last 3 years since Ty Votaw quit and suddenly was snapped up by the PGA Tour. I think Ty saw what was going to happen with women's golf. I think he saw the whole picture, what was going to happen. And, the strong will survive. And Ms. Bivens last year decided that her product was worth so much money to title sponsors that she had better raise the prices. So not only did she push for all the sponsors to raise the purse money, but they turned around and charged each tournament $100,000 extra, a fee, a quote-unquote LPGA Tour operating fee, which brought in another $3.2 million to the office last year. That's great, but at a lot of those events, that money came right off the top of the charitable donations that were being raised by the event. Good going, Carolyn. And now what's happened? She's going out and she's trying to sell a quasi-FedEx Cup to LPGA sponsors. Good luck, Carolyn. I mean, she's already losing 4 events off the schedule for next year. 4. And now she's going on, instead of trying to replace those, which represents between $20 and $25 million in sponsorship money, she's going out and trying to start a new event on top of all this. I don't know what she's doing. All right, we're having trouble. I guess Jack's on his cell phone. He's not in the Detroit area. He's taking a little vacation, a little golf vacation, after probably a very busy week for him at Oakland Hills. But we're having problem with his cell phone, and it keeps dropping out. When I talked to him yesterday, he had that problem too, but I hope that he would get to a spot where it wouldn't be a problem. Maybe, I don't know, Dave, can we call him on a landline where he's at? Maybe that's a possibility. Oh, we got Jack. Okay, Jack, let's see how long this lasts. And welcome in Jack Barry. Hi, Jack. Hello. All right, I guess we're going to have to try some more. So anyway, let me finish about the LPGA Tour. So now she's looking for sponsors and starting another event, and it's going to be a mess. And I also think, I'm not being racist here, I'm just talking about business. I just think they're going to have a problem in the future with more and more Asian players that don't speak English coming onto this tour. I just don't see. I mean, they always wanted to make golf global. Well, this is it, and this is what happens. And I don't care if there's Asian players on the tour, but what it does to the product from a business standpoint, I'm not sure how much support they're going to get in this country, and I don't know how many people would buy tickets to an event when you don't have any American players that are really competitive anymore. Maybe I'm wrong. Call me a racist. I'm just speaking from my heart here and looking at the golf business angle of the LPGA Tour. They have a problem there because they don't provide journalists interpreters. And a lot of the Asian players, they're very shy, and a lot of them don't speak English. So it's really hard to pull stuff out of somebody in an interview when you're going through, first of all, an interpreter, and try to write a story so that the golfing public, the spectators, who are the object of some of the marketing from the LPGA Tour, can get to know these players. I mean, just look at yourself. How much publicity after Birdie Kim won the U.S. Women's Open a few years ago? How many stories did you see about Birdie Kim, how she grew up, a little background on her? Nothing. I never saw anything. So I don't know what she's going to do. I mean, she's down 4 sponsors. Dave White, we talked about NASCAR a couple weeks ago. They're finding it harder and harder to keep sponsors. The sponsors are just, it's the economy. Some of these sponsors are downsizing. And NASCAR's not selling out its venues either, are they?
No, they're not. In fact, when I was in Michigan on Father's Day weekend, they had built back around 2000, they had built a brand new grandstand in Turn 3. Probably would seat about between 10 and 15,000 people. And for the first time this season, since they had built that around 2000, it was not sold out. In fact, it was only about 60% capacity. And there was various areas also throughout the track where, about the first 5 or 6 rows from the fence was also not sold out. Those are typically the worst seats in NASCAR. Being closer at NASCAR is not necessarily is better as far as viewing goes. Being up higher is actually better, so you can see the entire track. So typically around the track, about the first 5 or 6 rows all the way around the fence were also not sold out too. So it's just a sign of the economic times. People can't afford to drive 200-300 miles at $4 a gallon to come to these events and everything such as that.
All right, and that's people are probably waking up and turning on the Chicagoland Golf Show this morning, saying, "Why are these guys talking about NASCAR?" Well, I could tell you, this is what Tim Fincham looked at a few years ago when he conjured up the idea of the FedEx Cup playoffs. It's the same thing as, what do they call it in NASCAR, Dave?
The Sprint to the Chase now. Now that Sprint has become the top corporate sponsor for NASCAR, and it's now the Sprint to the Chase.
Yeah, okay. So what it is it's just another marketing tool to get the fans excited and have a climax to the season. Because historically in golf, this is the week after the PGA. Unless we were in a Ryder Cup year, everybody was done thinking about golf, and most of the big players would put it away. No, the President's Cup is not the same as the Ryder Cup. Don't tell me that. So that's why we're talking a little bit. Okay, so before I take a break, are we going to talk to Jack, or where do we stand with that?
Well, it looks like that Jack's phone is not holding up there. He happens to be in an area, I believe, up in northern Michigan where there's not very good cell service. What I'd like to do, if I can get him on the phone, is see if he had a landline that we could possibly call. But unfortunately, I can't get him on the phone with his cell phone long enough to ask him the question. So I don't know. It might not work with Jack this week, unfortunately.
Well, that's all right. We'll figure something out. We're opening up the phone lines. Let's do that then during the segment after the bottom of the hour. What's the phone number that they would call, Dave?
That would be 312-644-6767. That's
all right, we'll take a break. Oh, go ahead. Finish.
312, again, 312-644-6767.
All right, we've got a few minutes. We could take some phone calls. And we could talk about anything. You want to talk about the PGA? You want to talk about the way the course was set up? Bring it on. And we'll take a break right now. I'm Phil Kosin. He's Dave White back in the studios in Chicago. This is the Chicagoland Golf Show, and you're listening to CBS Radio Chicago, The Score, Sports Radio 670. This segment on The Score and Chicagoland Golf is brought to you by the DQ Hot Dog of the Week. Win a Dairy Queen gift card, log on to 670thescore.com for the DQ Hot Dog of the Week contest information. Well, sorry about Jack Berry, but he's up in the Great White North. Where they don't have a lot of cell towers up there. So, Jack, if you're listening on your computer or on your radio, it was a great try. But enjoy your vacation, and we'll figure something else out. Okay, let's go to the phone lines at 312-644-6767. Let's start with Derek on the south side. Derek, thanks for calling The Score.
No problem. Good morning. I enjoy your show.
Thank you very much.
I'm new to golf. I've never played the game. I've hit the ball off the driving range a few times, but I want to learn. I was wondering if there are some places in Chicago where a beginner can take some inexpensive lessons.
Oh, sure. The Chicago Park District courses. Where do you live on the south side?
Actually, that's why I thought about it. I'm in South Shore, not too far from the Jackson Park course.
Yeah, go over there and get a lesson from Manny Worley and tell him I sent you. Yeah, oh. Emmanuel Worley is the golf professional down there at Jackson Park.
Oh, okay.
Very good with beginners. Very good with beginners.
Oh, fantastic. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Are you married?
Yes, I am. I have 2 kids.
Well, I'm surprised. Here you're taking up golf, and I figured with being married, we all know that's already you got enough frustration in your life, right?
No, that was one of the reasons why I hadn't picked the game up, because I did have a daughter in college, and now that she's out, I have a little bit more disposable income.
Well, I'll tell you what, you got some great history, too, at Jackson Park and South Shore, those 2 golf courses down there.
Okay.
The South Shore course looks like something out of an F. Scott Fitzgerald novel. If you've never driven up the driveway from the street, it's pretty awesome. I mean, it goes way back in time. And it's a nice little 9-hole course, although I think for a beginner it might be a little too tight because Kemper Sports Management runs those courses, but sometimes they run into a conflict with the friends of the park and the tree huggers, and those people don't like to see the trees trimmed back. So it could be a little tight in spaces, but it's really a great golf course along Lake Michigan. And, of course, Jackson Park is the first public course that opened this side of the Allegheny Mountains. And so that's the first public course in Chicago. And you're pretty much going to play it as it was back in 1897 when they first started building it. So have fun and welcome to the game of golf, Derek.
Okay, one more follow-up question. That was one of the reasons why I asked, because I really wanted to take lessons during the winter so that I would be able to go out on the course in springtime. Where would a person go in, like, December, January, February if they wanted to take more lessons?
Well, there's a lot of indoor places, and there's domes where you can go hit golf balls in a dome. And I'm not sure where they're all going to be this winter, but I would look in an issue of Chicagoland Golf, our winter issue, which will be out sometime between the second week of November and Thanksgiving, and that'll list all the places where anyone could go to either practice during the winter, keep their swing sharp, or get lessons during the winter.
Oh, okay.
So I'll tell you what, call me at the office or send me an email, and I'll make sure you get a copy of that issue. How's that?
Will do.
My email address is pkosin, P-K-O-S-I-N, at chicagolandgolf.com.
Okay, pkosin at chicagoland.com.
chicagolandgolf.com.
Okay, got it.
Thanks, Derek. Have fun.
All right, thank you.
All right, let's go to Huntley, Illinois. We got John in Huntley. Hi, John. Welcome into the Score.
Hey, good morning, Phil. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
Hey, excellent. I have a question about Cog Hill.
Fire away.
That, and I don't want to steal from what you have come up in later in the hour, but I'm really curious why they tried to make those changes this year. Was it because of the greens needed to be updated with more of the technology with the sand, as you talked earlier? What was the impetus for that change?
Frank Jemsek needed a tax write-off.
Well, pretty okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Well, he had for a long time wanted the golf course to host a U.S. Open. That was his dad's dream. And I think Frank decided that he was going to do everything possible to try to complete that, or at least get a major championship there. And Frank's also smart enough to know that the golf course really hasn't had a lot of changes since it opened in 1964. And so really it needed a renovation like a lot of golf courses today are getting renovations. They need to move the bunkers out from the tee where everybody's hitting the ball, especially the tour pros. If you remember at Oakland Hills, if you watched that tournament last weekend, there was a bunker that was at 335 yards off the off the 18th tee that was brand new that Reese put in. The reason was for that was because guys are hitting it that far, and the whole idea is the bunkers are supposed to either direct you or provide a hazard and a penalty if you don't hit it straight. So Cog Hill did need some updating for the tour. I mean, it makes me sick when I see these guys go out there and shoot 64 or 65 on the course at Cog Hill. So it needed updating, and one of the criticisms from the USGA as to why the Cog Hill would not be considered for a U.S. Open was because the greens were dirt, like I explained earlier in the show.
Right.
They were very hard to control the firmness and the amount of moisture in the greens because of that. And so Frank just decided he was going to do this. If you want to have a U.S. Open at your course, having Reese Jones do the renovation work isn't going to guarantee that you'll get a U.S. Open, but I can guarantee you won't get one if he doesn't do it, pretty much, okay?
Well, yeah,
so that's why he brought Reese in, and then this year, let me finish, and then I'll let you go. The final thing is this year, the BMW Championship is not there. It's down in St. Louis at Bellerive, so Frank decided this would be a good year to do it, so that even if they had rain and there were some construction delays, he didn't need the golf course for the PGA Tour coming up in September. So that's why it was done this year. And I'm going to tell you something, it looks terrific.
Oh, I can't wait to play it, personally. Follow-up question. McHenry County, how many courses or do you like up there? My personal preference is Golf Club of Illinois. I work there in the summer. I'm a teacher by trade, so I have my summers off. I ranger and starter up there. My personal preference is Golf Club of Illinois, McHenry County. What would be one of your top favorites in McHenry County?
I used to like I haven't been there in years, but I used to like playing at, what is it called now? Redtail, Lakewood, it's got different names. Redtail.
Right, Redtail.
I love Golf Club of Illinois, and, it's funny you mentioned that because I was going to tell the listeners that while I was on vacation and had a few days off this week, I wrote a story about how Golf Club of Illinois got that 678-yard par 5.
Right.
I followed that. I followed the building of that golf course since it was the Ludwig Dairy Farm. And, over 30-something years of golf writing, I got so many stories that I've never written. They're all waiting for the right time, and I thought it was the right time to tell the story about how things changed at the Golf Club of Illinois and why they ended up with a 678-yard par 5, which was not in the original plan. So anybody that would like to read that, go to ChicagolandGolf.com, click on the little button for my blog, Worm Castings. And it's a pretty interesting story, and from looking at the numbers, the stats on the website, a lot of people are reading it through and taking 7, 8, 9 minutes to do it. I even have an aerial view of the golf course in there, so you can kind of follow what I'm saying about how there were changes. But when they put the biggest changes were made because it all started when they decided not to plant wildflowers at the top of the hill. They decided to put housing in there, and then the roads had to come in, and a lot of different things had to be moved. The 2 par 4s north of the golf course, it shortened up the range, and so on and so forth. And I found all that in my notes from when I played the golf course one day with my friend Bruce Borland, who was the golf course architect that got killed in the plane crash with Payne Stewart in 1999.
Right.
So anybody that's ever played golf course, if you just want a good insight on how things happened, I don't think golfers really have an idea that this kind of stuff goes on. And, of course, this is a great example, and there aren't many like it. I mean, we're talking about the tip of the iceberg here, but it's really an interesting story to see all the maneuvering that went on to put the housing in, put the roads in, and keep it. Their two focuses were to try to keep it at par 72 and to keep the golf course length at over 7,000 yards. That was the goals.
Right. We're at just over 7,000, and we're par 71. Our front is 35. Our back is 36. So, and it's just incredible, just how the last couple of years since we've got a new superintendent, Scott Klingberg, how it's improved dramatically. Okay. Even then, during the recession, we've been getting a fair amount of play. Not as much as last year, but thanks, Phil.
All right, John, thank you for your call. And we've got about 2 minutes left, so let's take one more call real quick from Hubert on the north side. Hi, Hubert. How are you?
Hi, Phil. I'm glad. Nice talking to you. You got a very informative show.
Thank you.
What I like most is you tell it like it is. And those professional golfers should try working for a living and see how tough it is. But my question is about Colin Montgomery.
Sure.
I mean, the guy has never won a PGA Tour event in this country. Never.
Never won a major.
Never won a major. Yet he's in all the majors every year. Every year. Now, I know there's some kind of a criteria they use to make it into the majors. But why is this man in every major every year? I just don't understand it.
Well, first of all, one of the requirements when you have a major is you need to have a designated crybaby. And that's why they invite Monty, because they always know he's good for some whining.
Okay.
No, seriously, he usually gets in. Of course, they have a lot of criterion. If you go to my website at ChicagolandGolf.com, on the front page on the left side where you got all the little buttons, there's one that says PGA Tour Priority Ranking.
Okay.
That'll give you an idea of how they choose players in what order to get into events. And for the majors, like the PGA Championship, they always go to the European Order of Merit, which is a nice way of saying money list. And Colin Montgomery plays exclusively in Europe, and because their tour is much weaker than the PGA Tour, he's always high enough on the Order of Merit, and that's how he gets in.
Now, there are some good players in these foreign countries, don't get me wrong.
But sure.
My opinion of these foreign players, that's a minor league of golf. I mean, this guy always plays in this league, in the minor leagues, and gets in the majors. That's not fair. There's some good players in this country that don't make it into the majors. And there's a lot of people in those majors that I never heard of. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, you and me both. But listen, I got to run, Hubert, but thank you for the call. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Phil.
And thank you for the kind words. Yeah, we tell it like it is here. I don't know any other way to do it. I mean, geez, got somebody in the media that's telling the truth. I guess that's unusual nowadays. All right, it's 6:47 in Chicago. This is The Score. I'm Phil Kosin. This is the Chicagoland Golf Show, and you're listening to CBS Radio in Chicago. The Score, Sports Radio 670. .51 in Chicago. If you've got a tee time at 7 o'clock, you got 9 minutes to get there. And thanks for listening until your tea time. And if you don't get to listen to any part of the show, you can go to 670thescore.com and listen there at your leisure. You can even download it and put it on your MP3 player. So
today I'll make sure they spell your name correctly on the website.
Yeah. Duh. Well, it's radio, you know. It's all phonetics. But you can't do that on a website. Anyway, thanks to all the callers. After the top of the hour, stick with us because we've got a real good discussion coming up with Reese Jones. He's the one that's redoing Cog Hill, the Open Doctor. You know who Reese is. I'm going to talk to him after 7 o'clock. I guess we had one more caller who couldn't stay on the line, Andy from Oregon. And it's a good question. Andy wanted to know what we thought of golf in the Olympics. You know, I'd have to see what the format is. They tried golf in the Olympics once before. This is how, I criticize the USGA and the people that run golf. This is how smart, these are the people that are making the rules, and I want to show you how smart they are. They decided to try to put golf in as an exhibition sport during the Olympics when they were in Atlanta. Guess what golf course they chose to do it on? Augusta National, where they don't allow women members. Okay? Duh. So guess how far that went, you know? I mean, why don't you make a Hindenburg out of lead and try to get it up and fly it over Chicago during the air show this weekend? That's how stupid it is. Now, I did see one idea, and it would have to be tweaked, and they'd have to figure out a format. I did see one idea, Dave, where they were talking about incorporating the PGA Championship every fourth year in with the Olympics. In other words, moving it around the globe and using the PGA Championship and maybe an elimination series to qualify, not having the 20 club pros in it every fourth year, and using the PGA Championship as some sort of an Olympic thing. And you know, that may have some merit, but on the other hand, I don't think the PGA of America is going to go along with it.
No, but it does sound interesting, though. At least it's an interesting format and something that's out of the norm for golf. So, you know, it's an idea. It's an option, I guess. But, yeah, I mean, whatever I guess it would take to grow the game of golf, you know, worldwide, I guess is what they're thinking.
Yeah. You know, I got to ask you something. I'm listening to you in my headphones, as the people at home know that we're doing this show, as we always do on Saturday mornings, from the Kosin compound. You're down at the Score Studios in the Loop. You sound different today. You sound like you got a haircut.
I did, and guess what? I used one of our fine sponsors, Sports Clips, yesterday. Went to the fine shop in Carroll Stream yesterday, and a girl named Deborah took good care of me.
All right.
Easy now. She gave me a good haircut, all right?
I like to go to the little barber shop. Of course, he's moved now. It was next to the tavern that had the Blatt sign in downtown Lamont. The barber shop was, God, it looked like you walked into a 1925 barber shop, and that's what I like to do. Is I like to go to a place where I feel like I can get a man's haircut. Once I have been several times to golf tournaments in the New York area over the last 25 years, and I've always made it a point to get my hair cut at the same place. It's a place where the guys, it's a real barber shop that goes back to the 1920s. They got pictures of Joe DiMaggio and Babe Ruth and Yankees on the wall. The guys all have tattoos because they all cut hair in the Navy. And it's a real man's barber shop where they take the razor and shave the back of your neck and everything. And I like that. I don't like going to these frou-frou places or the discount places where the girls pop gum and they talk about their boyfriends, and, you know, I don't need that when I get it.
No, I don't allow that talk while I'm getting my hair cut. No boyfriend talk.
I don't have that much hair left anyway, and so when I get it cut, I want a man's haircut. All right, it's 6:56 in Chicago. We'll take a break, come back on the other side with Reese Jones. I'm Phil Kosin. This is the Chicagoland Haircut Show, and you're listening to CBS Radio in Chicago. The Score, Sports Radio 670.
Let's get back to Phil Kosin and Chicagoland Golf on 670 The Score.
Oh, man, I could just listen to that every week. And I think we do.
I'm pretty certain we do.
That's kind of the theme music to kick off the second half of the show, and boy, have we got a good one today. Everybody knows who Reese Jones is. They all know his father, Robert Trent Jones. They all know the Open Doctor. So, I don't know, he's one of the few guests we have that really doesn't need an introduction to golfers. So let's just say good morning, Reese Jones. How's everything in New Jersey?
Great, Phil. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How did you survive the PGA Championship at Oakland Hills, where you did all the restoration work?
Well, I think we got a major champion, so I think we survived well. That's what the club wanted. They wanted the cream to rise to the top, and you had Sergio and Patrick, and it was right down the wire.
You know, as a golf course architect, a lot of these golf courses are being renovated. Of course, you're not doing all of them, and it seems like, you know, maybe it's me, and far be it from me to be honest, brutally blunt, critical, but it seems like over the years, maybe not so much because of the renovation work, but because of the course setup, we've had what I would consider fluke winners. How do you feel about that?
Well, we probably had that at Carnoustie, and I guess maybe at Oak Hill. That was a pretty tough setup. They could just hack it out of the rough around the greens. We didn't have that at Oakland Hills. It was a 3.5-inch rough. They mowed it again on Saturday, and they watered the fairways, and then the course softened up, and they were able to fly the ball at the pin.
I saw a quote, I don't know if you saw it or not, from Steve Elkington. I think Bob Verdi had it in his column for Golf World. Basically, Steve was complaining about the way the course played, and your name came up in that quote. And as I told the listeners last Saturday, the things that were causing the players problems were the rough, especially around the greens, and the putting surfaces. And Reese Jones had nothing to do with that. Reese, the greens there are the same surfaces, although there's been a lot of top dressing over the years that Donald Ross did. Your dad didn't touch those in 1951, and neither did you. No. And and they don't come to you and say, how long should we do the rough? That's their decision, right?
That's correct, and it's really Kerry Haig, and I think he did a great job. I mean, we did tighten the fairways, though. They were 32 yards wide during the Ryder Cup, and now they're about 26 yards wide, so they have to hit a little bit more straight. And then we did add a few bunkers, so the bunkers are more in the landing area. But they weren't complaining about that. They were really complaining about the rough and the firmness of the fairway that kicked the ball in the rough, and they were complaining about the green surfaces. But Hogan hit longer clubs into those greens back in 1951 than these guys did.
Yeah, you think so? But you know what? It finally caught up to the big guy, the guy that hits the ball the longest on the PGA Tour, J.B. Holmes. He played really well for 3 rounds, and then he got out of the box starting that 4th round on Sunday, and that was it. Game, set, match. All because, if you live by the long drive on a majors course, you die by the long drive, correct?
That's correct, and even the announcers, when he took out the driver on the first hole, questioned it because that hole has it's a little downslope, and you can hit a short club in even if you hit a 3-wood off the tee.
So evaluate for us after all the renovation work. And first of all, let's do it this way. Why don't you tell us what the specified goal of the Oakland Hills membership was when they brought you in to make these changes?
Well, they just wanted to make sure that it was a championship test for the 21st century, just as it had been for the 20th century. And they wanted a little bit more length added because the ball's going on average more than 50 yards farther from the late 90s till now, and probably much longer than that since they had their Open. And they just want to make sure the bunkers were in place for these longer drives because a lot of the bunkers were too short. We didn't touch the greens because they're so phenomenal. Those are some of the best championship greens you'll ever see. But they just want to make sure that it was a proper test. And also, I think we wanted to make sure they had the flexibility. They didn't play all the back tees that we put in. They never played the back tee on 9. They alternated on the back tee on 17. I don't think they used it much either. And so, they gave Kerry Haig and the PGA the flexibility to set up the course depending on the weather conditions. And I think he did a great job.
Okay. When I do these interviews, folks at home, I don't have a list of questions. I'm the kind of interviewer that listens to what the guest has to say, and that's where I get my next question. And that's why I'll explain where this one comes from. Let's talk about Augusta National for a minute, because that's the annual site of a major. That's what that golf course is all about. Tom Fazio did all the work there. You had nothing to do with it. But it's been my opinion that with only 2 sets of tees, 1 championship, 1 for the members, a golf course like that, Reese, lacks flexibility so that if you do have a problem with an unusual wind like they had at Oakland Hills, you still have other tees where you can shorten it up a little bit and keep the thing competitive.
That's right, and I think they discovered that a couple of years ago when they had the cold weather and had the wind coming straight down the first hole. None of the players could get to the top of the hill from the new back tee, and they added another 10 yards to that tee for last year's Masters. And I understand actually that they're going to shorten number 7 and shorten 15, so they're responding a little bit to what they've seen as far as play.
How do you balance when you get a golf course like Oakland Hills that, the great Donald Ross worked on, and then your dad made some changes? How do you approach making another set of changes, basically to keep the golf course updated with the equipment? How do you make those changes And how do you approach it without trying to disturb the essentials that give the golf course its character?
Well, if you look at the old photos from the 1937 Open, Oakland Hills was just a wide open piece of ground. It didn't have any vegetation. None of those golf courses did. And that's why this movement to take down all the trees is crazy, because everybody intended to plant trees and frame the holes. They just built all the golf courses on the highland, which was farmland. And so we looked at Oakland Hills. We made sure that the greens are untouched and just left as is. We just shifted the bunkers out where they come into play. We left the members' tees the same, so they get to play the same golf course. Now that the championship is over, we'll mow the rough down to an inch and a half, so the member has a lot more latitude. So in essence, we've just sort of restored what my father and Donald Ross did, but brought it into the 21st century because the ball is going so much farther, and the equipment is so much better. The players are better conditioned. The ball is custom designed for them. The metal-headed drivers, the light shafts. I mean, every combination of effects make the ball go farther. And we didn't want to drive and pitch golf course, and nobody does. You don't want to have a three-club, only needing 3 clubs in your bag to play in a tournament.
Yeah, and all those reasons you stated is exactly why I love to listen to the players whine. You know, I mean, this is a major. This is a defining moment in anyone's career who wins it or even is competitive in it, and it should be tough, right?
That's right. I mean, when they say that players all love it, I say, well, I wonder what I did wrong.
Well, like at Torrey Pines, all the players came away from that one saying what a wonderful setup it was. And I would stop and think, if I was the USGA, I'd stop and think and go, wow, where did we go wrong here?
No, they like the graduated rough. They like the fact that if they just missed the fairway, they were only an inch and a half rough, then it would graduate to 2.5 inches, and then it would go to 4.5 inches. So they're penalized to the degree they missed their shot. What the players complained about at Oakland Hills is that they went from the first little courtesy cut right into 3.5 inch rough, right off the fairway. And I don't know if you noticed that Sergio on I guess Saturday, he had a driver an 8-iron. On Sunday, a driver 9-iron on the second hole, par 5, whereas the other 2 players that playing with him were in the rough and really had to hack it out. So I think that was the complaint, that the rough was too high, just right off the fairway.
Yeah, now you said that they're going to cut the rough down for the members, which is what they always do, but I want to point something out to the listeners, because maybe they haven't thought about this aspect. You can't really cut the rough down to fairway height and make the fairways narrower. That is something they're committed to unless they want to go through and remove all that bluegrass and put bent back down. They did the same thing at Olympia Fields, and so the members are going to have to play those narrow fairways too, right, Reese?
That's correct, but they're going to play a fairway, a rough that they can really forward the ball from. And I think that's what Kerry Haig ultimately did on Saturday. He had the rough and the landing areas mowed so that they could forward the ball. That was the whole intent, to take the spin off the ball, but enable the players to forward it to the target and possibly not hold the green as well, especially on those greens that were so severe.
Talk about a little bit about and explain to the listeners how greens were designed when they were using push-up dirt-based greens at a place like Oakland Hills when Donald Ross did it, and why they had the contouring that they have today.
Well, Donald Ross is a Scotsman. He came from Dornoch, and he learned his architecture from observing the British links, and those greens, especially St. Andrews, have all kinds of elevation changes and movement and transitions. And Bobby Jones, too, when he did Augusta National, and when he and my father did Peachtree, they put a lot of contour in the greens because that's what they learned from observing the golf courses of Scotland and England. And I think that's why Donald Ross put so much contour in. And we're doing a lot more of that. We're getting ready for the BMW at Belle Reve, and there's a lot of contour in those greens. And I think that's the only thing that makes par a standard of excellence anymore, in light of the fact that these guys are hitting the ball so much farther and so much more accurately. So the putter is probably the only thing that really hasn't changed as much as the other clubs.
How do you feel about having to make changes to these golf courses? Obviously, it's necessary because of the the equipment changes over the years, the technology, especially over just the last 15 years. How do you feel, though, about going in and touching someone else's work? Because I don't think you'd want anybody else coming in and doing the same thing on stuff that you've built.
But they will someday. And I know that. So, but I've been kind of lucky. When we went into the Country Club at Brookline, we basically took out all the features that had been built like the 20 previous years and brought them back to the old style architecture. We used old photographs and really kind of restored it. And that was a true restoration. Pinehurst number 2, we just added length and changed the mowing patterns and rebuilt the greens the way Donald Ross had them because we had a bad mix on them. So basically that was a pure restoration. At Congressional Atlanta Athletic Club, it had been rebuilt and built by two different architects. So we had to consolidate, and we basically rebuilt the whole golf course, and so that it would play in modern technology. With modern technology, and Atlanta Athletic Club and Congressional had the 2 majors in 2011, and they wouldn't have them if we hadn't rebuilt the course. So each site, each project is different. At Cog Hill, we're really bringing in the 21st century, but at the same time, we're really very, very conscious of what Dick Wilson did because we're kind of following his green patterns.
Okay, we're going to take a break. Reese Jones is our guest. If you haven't figured that out yet, you know him, the Open Doctor. He's the one responsible for the changes at Oakland Hills for last week's PGA. He's working on Cog Hill. He's touched just about every course that's hosted a U.S. Open in the last few years. We'll take a break. I'm Phil Kosin. And, Reese, when we come back, I'm going to ask you if you think the equipment has finally hit the wall to we're not going to have to keep doing this and doing updates to golf courses. I'm Phil Kosin. This is the Chicagoland Golf Show, and you're listening to CBS Radio in Chicago, The Score, Sports Radio 670. 7:20 in Chicago. If you've got an 8 o'clock tee time, you've got 40 minutes. But stay with us right here because we're going to keep talking to, I'll call him a friend, Reese Jones, one of my favorite buddies in the golf course architecture business. By the way, let me mention that this segment on The Score and Chicagoland Golf is brought to you by the all-new Horseshoe Casino. Discover a spectacular destination where entertainment knows no bounds, and Perillo BMW. All right, Reese Jones, welcome back to the show. Have we finally seen golf equipment hit the wall? Because over the last 15 or 20 years, it's been a horrendous race between golf course architects trying to keep courses up to date to be able to protect par, or however you want to look at it, against the equipment that kept getting longer and more accurate. Have we finally reached, in your opinion, a wall where you can make these changes and not worry about them for a while?
Well, on Tuesday I played with 3 executives from Callaway Golf, and I asked them the same question, and they think it's hit the wall to some degree. There's very little yardage left because the computer technology that everybody's using can actually draw the line in the sand. The USGA in past years used a mechanical player they used to call Iron Byron, and they had a driving range where they hit balls, but it wasn't quite as effective as this computer technology. So I think finally these golf courses will not have to be changed for a long, long time, and maybe ever.
Early in PGA week, the USGA made the announcement, finally, the other shoe dropped, in this thing that's been going on for 2 years about grooves. And, I didn't even bother writing about it. It doesn't really affect the casual player, most of us. It's only going to affect basically the PGA Tour player. And we're going to be able to keep our clubs, I think, till what? They're grandfathered in till 2024. Even the old pings that I have that were grandfathered in almost 20 years ago. But with this new change in the rules with the grooves for the elite player, is that going to cause any rumblings in the golf course architecture, or is that something you guys aren't going to have to worry about?
No, it really doesn't affect us. It just affects the setup of the golf courses when they have championships on them. The rough will be more effective now. You won't be able to hit shots that spin to the hole out of the rough as they have done in past championships. So I think it's really basically a major championship issue, and you and I won't have much of a problem with it. In fact, the V-groove, Patrick Harrington told me it goes a little bit farther, so it actually helps the average golfer. And also, we generally release the ball to the hole, and these V-grooves really release the ball, won't spin as much, so we're going to be able to release the ball better, and the pros are going to actually have shot options where they can release the ball and spin the ball, which they really don't have with the U-grooves right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because you were with the Callaway executives the other day. Did they express any of what I'm feeling? Is that the equipment industry is going to go through another little shakeout here now because the economy, people aren't buying clubs. The new technology for this year was the heads and the shafts that would be interchangeable, and that never took off with the public. Are they looking at a bleak period right now in the equipment industry?
Well, they have that program where you can sell back your old clubs, so I think that's helping them. And from what I understand, the club industry is down a little bit, but not as much as you would think in light of the economy. Maybe this groove change will be popular in the average golfer. It's probably going to help the average golfer, so I think the average golfer might want V grooves, especially on golf courses with open entrances. So maybe that'll help them with sales, too.
When you did all the changes, and we can kind of move into the Cog Hill arena now, but I think one of the things that was important to Frank Jemsek, which would not be important so much to the people at Oakland Hills, is that Frank is going to have 51 weeks out of a year the average player playing there. So what's the difference between the way you made the changes and the way you approached it at Oakland Hills, where the members wanted to play tough even for themselves and their guests, or opposed to a golf course that needs repeat play like Cog Hill number 4 to keep things going for the Jemseks?
Well, we've already done that at Bethpage Black and Torrey Pines, and I think that's why Frank wanted us to do the work. Plus, we've redone Royal Montreal and Lyford Key. They're really, really great Dick Wilson courses. And we've kept a lot of the character. In fact, some people may go in there and just say, well, you fixed the bunkers, but what else did you do? The greens are actually, to some degree, maybe easier to access some of the hole locations, like on number 7. And we're going to play them all from the same tees as they played from before, so they're basically playing the same length. Some of the bunkers are farther out, so the average golfer may not even be able to get to them, which makes it more enjoyable for them. And the green contours are not as severe as Oakland Hills, so in essence, it's a great public golf course. It's really a great championship golf course, too.
All right, we're going to take one more break, and we'll come back for a final segment with our friend Reese Jones. I don't even have to tell you who he is if you're a golfer, if you have a pulse or have ever been on a golf course. This is one of the top guys of all time in the business. Reese, when we come back, I want to talk about Cog Hill, and would you be willing to take a few intelligent questions from listeners?
Sure.
Okay, we will do that then. We'll come back with Reese Jones. I'm Phil Kosin. This is the Chicagoland Golf Show, and you're listening to CBS Radio in Chicago, The Score, Sports Radio 670. 7:30 in Chicago on the Chicagoland Golf Show on a beautiful August Saturday. A great weekend. Go out and play some golf. That would be a good idea. But right now, let's talk some more with Reese Jones, the Open Doctor, one of the top architects in the business, and from a very talented family. Let's say that. Okay, Reese, bring us up to date on where the work is at Cog Hill and how you feel that project is going.
Well, the project is done. We had a great fall last fall and got the majority of the work done. The greens were all rebuilt to USGA specifications. They have sub-air under them so that the Jemsek family can dry them out if there's a heavy rain. We've got some more length, and we pushed the bunkers out, and the bunkers are really look like Dick Wilson bunkers from years past. So in essence, it's a U.S. Open worthy golf course. It's going to host the BMW Classic for several years, but I also think it's going to be a very enjoyable golf course for the members, the public, because we've improved the turf so much. The putting is to be better. Around the greens, there's a lot more turf, so the recovery shots are going to be improved. The sand is all new, so that's going to be an easier shot. So in essence, it's going to be an easier course for the public if they play the proper tees, and a real championship test and U.S. Open worthy for the world of golf.
Okay. Let me do this. I forgot to do this when we started this. This segment on The Score and Chicagoland Golf is brought to you by Fifth Third Bank. Discover the things we can do for you at 53.com. Fifth Third Bank, the things we do for dreams. Okay, that takes care of the biz. By the way, if you'd like to, if you have an intelligent question or a comment for Reese Jones, 312-644-6767. We have phone lines open. Reese, did you change any of the green contours on number 4 at COG?
Well, yeah, we took some of the reverse slopes out on, like, the second hole and enlarged that green a little bit. We elevated the green on 9. We dropped the green on 18, so it's closer to the water. So really all the green contours have been modified for the speed that golfers like to play. It's much higher speed on the greens than it was when Joe Jumps and Dick Wilson built that golf course.
Reese, one of my evil dreams has always been to get a battery-operated set of hair clippers and sneak out there the night before either the Western Open would start or now the BMW Championship and shave the bank all the way down the left side of the 18th green down to the water. What are we going to see when that course opens up again? I know the green's lower mainly for spectator viewing, but what's the green going to be like, and how does it going to interface with the water?
Well, the green is dropped 5 feet, and we brought it closer to the water, and I think that's a great idea, Phil. Shave the bank, and it'll be a real difficult shot. It's a par 4 that's almost 500 yards long, and we bracketed both sides of the fairway, which makes the golfer have to think about hitting drivers, so he may be hitting a longer club in than if you hit the driver. So it's going to be a heck of a finishing hole. And it's an appropriate hole because every great golf course has to have a great finishing hole.
That's where a lot of it happens. All right, well, we've got the update on Cog Hill. We're taking phone calls for a few minutes that we have remaining with Reese Jones, 312-644-6767. Let's start with Tom in Niles. Tom, you're on the score with Reese Jones.
Oh, how you doing, Mr. Jones?
Fine, Tom.
Hey, you did a great job in Michigan for the PGA, and I was wondering, J.D. Holmes was in contention for the first 2.5 to 3 rounds. When the tournament decided to move the tees forward, he didn't adjust his game, and I was wondering, did you pick up on that, and which is why he was hitting in the bunkers and in the rough later on in the 4th round?
Well, yeah, because in the 3rd round they were the greens, the fairways were fast and the rough was tough, so they moved the tees up. You're absolutely right. So he probably should have throttled back. He definitely should have throttled back on the first hole. They never used the back tee on number 1 at all, so he didn't need the driver, and he got himself under a pine tree and really couldn't get out after a couple of shots.
Right. Well, anyway, thank you, and keep up the great work.
Thanks.
And he's out there with all the others protecting the integrity of the game of golf. It's the architects versus the equipment manufacturers. 312-644-6767. Reese Jones is our guest for a few more minutes. We go to Tim on a cell phone. Hi, Tim. Welcome into the score. You're on with the great Reese Jones.
Hey, Phil, this is Tim Miles. I just was calling Reese. We built a couple of his golf courses, and he's a great architect. I just was wondering what his feeling was about the different types of grasses that are in the rough now, particularly in the northern climate. I think something that's been overlooked is the new bluegrasses are so decumbent in growth. They grow more horizontal, and they're so thick versus courses 30 years ago with common bluegrass. And I think that the PGA Tour has overlooked the fact that the rough, when they grow it at 3 or 4 inches today, is a lot different than 3 or 4 inch rough 25 or 30 years ago, and I think they ought to rethink that. Golfers can have a chance, even the PGA players have a chance to hit recovery shots. I wondered what he thought about that.
Well, Tim, you're absolutely right. It's a new improved bluegrass, and in some cases it's been sodded the year before, like at Baltusrol, we sodded the roughs in the entire rough areas before the championship, and I think that it is taken into account. That's why it's not as high as it was at Oak Hill. It's down to 3.5 inches now, and they played practice rounds at 3.5 inches, and it was fine. I think what happened on the last day, the rough became more treacherous because of the rains, and the height of cut was already established.
Okay. I was wondering what you thought and made sure I wondered if the architects were taking that into effect. It's so different than it was.
Well, in the fescues, we actually don't use the improved fescues anymore. We use the old ones because we don't want that too thick. We want the golfer to find the ball. So right. I think you're absolutely right. We ought to think maybe you're not necessarily using the new improved varieties.
Keep up the great work. I can't wait to see Cog Hill.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. Hey, Reese, let me ask you a question. Let me jump in. So many things have changed. That's Tim Miles of Golf Visions, one of the management companies at Chicago Courses here. And his family has been involved with golf. I don't know if you know Tim, but did you know Oscar Miles, who was at Butler National?
Oh, yeah,
and then
well.
the Merit Club. Yeah, that's Tim's brother.
Okay.
But let me ask you this. Have you used on any of your new construction the new Lomo Bluegrass? It's so thick and hardy, and it still gives you the highly desirable up-lie, like, again, on bent grass. And it's a lot cheaper and easier to maintain, especially when it comes to disease and heat and humidity. Well,
we have all bluegrass out in the mountains in Jackson, Wyoming, at Three Creek Ranch, and we use that variety of grass for our fairways because bent grass doesn't do very well with the snow mold and all the winter problems they have. So we have used that for fairways, but it's also good for rough too.
Mm-hmm. All right, we got Reese Jones on the phone for a few more minutes. 312-644-6767. We'll take your phone calls for a few more minutes. We go to Edward on a car phone. Edward, you're on with Reese Jones.
Good morning, Reese. How are you?
Fine, Edward.
I have a question. I had an opportunity to play Erin Hills a couple of weeks ago, up just a little bit west of Milwaukee. I heard a lot of great things about it, but when I got there, I was rather surprised that about 5 or 6 holes, the approach shot was completely blind. And I'd never, ever encountered that, and I've played courses all over the country, and I'm curious from an architecture standpoint, is that a legitimate design concept in a golf course?
Well, I think in Erin Hills, Mike Hurson, Dana Fry, and Ron Whitten wanted to just utilize the lay of the land as it was, much like we had to do 100 years ago, and build a classic old-style golf course. If you look at the country club at Brookline, there's several blind holes there, but in America we don't build as many blind holes because we have so many lawyers when people get hit by a golf ball. So I think it's more of a British style that they copied for Erin Hills, and they utilized the land as it was, and I think that's why I have the blind shots.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Edward. Yeah, minimalist is the key word at Erin Hills, huh?
Yes.
Okay, we got another caller, Bob from Palatine. You're on with Reese Jones on the score, Bob.
Thanks. Hi, Reese. I just had a quick question about the sand used in bunkers, and I'm curious, outside of maybe economic reasons, how you would decide to use maybe a coarse sand versus a diamond white or something like that.
Well, the USGA has a specification for sand, and we test all the sands before they go in the bunkers, and then you just have to hope that the sand we tested is the sand that they deliver. And I think this is the biggest bugaboo right now for golfers because they don't like to get fried eggs, and they really want to be able to recover out of them. They want a firm surface, and so you need a sharp sand. You can't have a round sand, otherwise it'll move around too much. So I think that the choice has to be tested. You have to make sure the manufacturer delivers the sand that you had tested, and then you're going to be okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for your call. Let's go to the phone lines again. We got Mark in Joliet. You're on with golf course architect Reese Jones.
Hey, Reese. I got a question. Central Illinois still has a lot of bluegrass fairways. What's the optimal height, and is there a time of the day you should cut to help prevent disease?
Well, I'm not really an agronomist. I'm more of an architect, and the optimal height is for the golfer is probably different than for the superintendent because the superintendent doesn't want to lose the grass. So he wants it to be a little bit longer, and the average golfer he's not affected by it because he's not trying to spin the ball that much. I really can't tell you what the optimum height is for the golfer, but of course he wants it as tight as possible.
All right. I guess we Mark from Joliet hung up, but he sounds like a superintendent, doesn't he?
Yes.
I mean, that's the kind of question you get from golf course superintendents.
Well, bluegrass you can't grow you can't cut it as tight, and that's why a lot of people don't want to use it. But it's a very effective fairway grass in many areas. Kentucky uses bluegrass fairways all over the place. But
it is more inexpensive too if you're looking to set up when you build a course and when you design courses too. You also have an eye toward maintenance, do you? I mean,
it takes less water. It takes less chemicals. It's actually easier grass to maintain.
Sure. I mean, that was I wrote an item on my blog about Robert Bruce Harris. And one of his things, everybody, the architecture elitists now make fun of his work, but Robert Bruce Harris worked at a time where they were looking to economize. Golf course owners wanted to cut back. They wanted a challenging golf course, but they wanted to cut back on maintenance costs. Now, one of his tricks was that he had the round bunkers, so you didn't have to hand mow. And when he placed the bunkers greenside, it was exactly the width of a gang mower, so they could just drive the tractor through, pull the gang mower, and not have to do a lot of extra maintenance. Is that one of the considerations that you sit down with the owners and talk about when you're going to design a course? And also, how closely do you work with the golf course superintendent? I think most architects like to have the guy on site from the first day.
Well, it's imperative that he be on site the first day because we got to make sure that we're putting the products that he wants. The green mix is tested by him. The grass selections, we go over the superintendent, the irrigation, the equipment. So it's imperative. Plus, you don't need to worry about the gang mowers anymore. Those were tractor-drawn mowers. Now you've got these little triplex mowers that can mow much tighter, much narrower areas, so you don't have to have the bunkers as far away. But you're absolutely right. Robert Bruce Harris was considering the business aspects. People enjoyed those golf courses. Donald Ross never put his bunkers close to the greens. He just used the slopes of the greens as a hazard. Jeffrey Cornish in the Northeast used that gang mower approach, and I think that isn't effective anymore because we have mowers that can mow between the bunker and the green much more easily with less blades.
Reese, thank you for your time this morning. You are always a great guest. You're always welcome here on the Chicagoland Golf Show, and especially I want to thank you for chatting with the listeners because I don't think the average guy gets a chance to talk to a Reese Jones that often.
Well, Phil, thank you. I've been very fortunate to first work with Medina, and we're doing a little work getting ready for the Ryder Cup of 2012, and the work with the Jemsick family has been a real joy in my life because Joe and my father are good friends, and now I'm a friend of all the family. It's really been a joy working with Jemsick, so thanks, Phil.
All right, well, we appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you. That's Reese Jones, guys, and boy, like I said, I'm really thrilled that we're able to hook up some of the listeners so they can talk to Reese Jones. I hope we made your day for you, just like you make mine for listening every Saturday morning. We'll take a break and come back with a final word. I'm Phil Kosin. This is the Chicagoland Golf Show, and you're listening to CBS Radio in Chicago, The Score, Sports Radio 670. I don't mind accepting my paycheck for today. I think that was a pretty good show. And Dave, I think it's really terrific where we get somebody on like Reese Jones and the listeners, as I said it before, but I'm going to say it again, the listeners have a chance to talk to him because you don't often get to do that.
Yeah, that's a rare opportunity to talk to somebody like that, somebody who designs golf courses like all over the world.
Yeah, has done a lot of golf courses, and he was in the spotlight last week at Oakland Hills, and as I said it last week, I said it earlier in the show, I'll say it again. Everything the players were complaining about, even though he got mentioned specifically by name a couple times, he had nothing to do with that. It was the way the PGA of America and Kerry Haig set the place up. That's the way it goes. And I'm sorry for all the whiners at the PGA Championship, but that's the way it goes. It's a major championship, and the whole concept of having a major is that it's a tough golf course. And Reese admitted, like at Oak Hill, there was a fluke winner, Sean McKeel. And through the time, because of course setups or whatever, I always feel that the really over-the-edge course setups, and I don't think Oakland Hills was over the edge. I thought it was up to the line, but not over. I think that it brings bad luck too much into play, which is a shame. And the bad luck, it affects the good players just as well as it affects the lousy players in the field. And I don't like to see guys get eliminated from tournaments because of bad luck. And when you have courses like, the TPC at Sawgrass and some of the outlandish setups, when you have that bad luck, it knocks the guys out that you want to see playing for the championship on the weekend. But it didn't happen at Oakland Hills. Maybe it was because Mother Nature threw down a couple inches of rain on Saturday and softened up the greens. But whatever, I thought it was terrifically entertaining. Apparently, TV viewers don't agree with us because the numbers were pretty lousy again for another major without Tiger. And if you don't think Tiger has an impact on golf, you're living in a cave. I had fun today, Dave. How about you?
Yeah, I did too. You know, and getting back to what you said too about the golf course and everything, I think Reese said it best. He goes, the PGA wanted a champion.